Hey everybody, welcome back to Nifilmism. I'm Ryan,
I'm Drew.
and today we're gonna finally get into a topic that we've been discussing for a while, and given that it's been 17 years since 9/11, no time like the present to talk about Jingoism in American film. It's been a weird turn of events the last couple weeks movie-wise. I mean, I don't know. I heard an ad on the radio from a construction company that was trying to use 9/11 to sell stuff. It was kind of weird. On top of that, 12 Strong was recently in theaters, and I just watched a movie that's sort of the antidote to that, and we'll get back to that in a minute. But we've been talking for a while about how there's been sort of this jingoistic trend in film over especially the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, and you could see it with, especially with all the the most recent one that I remember hearing about was, or in seeing ads for that made me roll my eyes was the we're gonna get Australian Chris Hemsworth to play an American soldier as the first spearhead in the war in Afghanistan.
Oh yeah, you know what's funny about that is I'm having a tough time remembering the names of most of these movies.
Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to remember anything.
Because they all blur together.
Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to really remember anything.
And for the record, I haven't watched most of these. I've caught bits or pieces out of morbid curiosity as they showed up on cable, or, something else is starting on HBO in the next 20 minutes. Maybe I'll watch a few minutes of this.
Well, I think it's because our tastes tend to go towards the more acerbic anti-war movies like Lord of War and Charlie Wilson's War, where that's kind of a backdrop, but the how we fucked these things up is the more interesting story.
Which is so weird because I think the realization I came to was doing a little bit of research for this podcast episode. There's a very specific market for these kind of movies. And it's the same sort of market that, oh god,
and cheap
we're getting
February horror movies are made for.
Almost,
not the same target market, but the same kind of target market where
we know we're
gonna make our back end on a certain type of person, basically.
Yeah, most of these movies too have a budget of 30-40 million, which all things considered is pretty modest.
Yeah, because you figure most of that's probably going for location probably doesn't cost much because most of these movies are going to be shot in probably whatever dusty area of California you could find or anywhere wooded, and then hey, we need to pay a military consultant and we just need fatigues.
Yeah. And no one's putting even near the effort that maybe they put into John Wick in terms of getting some of the
cinematography,
the gunfighting right, or the cinematography. This is all very much a message-based movie, or message-based movies, and it's impossible to get into this topic without getting political. And there is definitely a certain core audience, and that core audience tends to be the one that Republicans try to appeal to, and it's the ones that seem to conflate patriotism with nationalism. And this is really, it shows in the user scores on these movies.
Oh, the huge discrepancies between what critics see as basically a cheap cash grab and flag waving nonsense versus people who really, really vehemently deny that that's what these movies are.
So I grabbed just a pretty random assortment. I typed in military movies, and I started to look for stuff over the last 10-12 years. And I took a look at a bunch of them and just started looking at either the Rotten Tomatoes or Metacritic score and compared that to the user score. Now, I understand that a lot of times these scores are going to be very different, especially when you get something like an art house movie where a critic is going to love it. The average person who thought, based on the trailer, that they were getting something else.
Yeah.
Like, I just watched, just as a quick aside, I just watched You Were Never Really Here with Joaquin Phoenix. I should not have been inebriated for that movie. I was expecting a more heady version of something like Taken, and it was not that.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing where you're going to get a big discrepancy between user scores and critic scores. Let's take that out of the equation, though.
Considering we're talking about traditional what you see is what you get movies.
Yeah, there's nobody. Yeah, exactly. Nobody is trying to lie about what you're getting. You're getting a movie where, for the most part, some American soldier is going to some foreign country and stopping some threat of some sociological other because, yay.
It's been 20 years and it's waning a bit, so we need to make sure we keep people interested.
And I want to get back to that. You know what? Let's get into that right now. There's plenty out there that shows that people will tie their own identities to things that are external. If you get into things like terror management theory, it's what people do in order to distract themselves from the fact that we are all ultimately just going to die. That's why a lot of people will statistically, if you are not quite as adept at talking about your own mortality, you tend to be more religious. And people that aren't religious tend to gravitate towards things like nationalism, because, and then you get the double whammy of the religious.
It's kind of like a unconscious hedging your bets that it's worthwhile in some way.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm going to die at some point, but I'm an American, goddammit, and I can associate myself with this because it's the land I was born in. So, yay, America! It's what I associate with. It's bigger than me that I feel like I'm a part of.
It's an internal inflation of self, basically. Yeah.
You could be as big a sport fan as you want. You're not the one out there throwing the passes.
Yeah.
But starting in 2006, with one of the biggest discrepancies, we had Home of the Brave, which I had completely forgotten about. I couldn't even tell you, even after looking this up, who starred in it. But I clicked on it because it was sort of what we were looking for.
That automatically kind of has the cheesy smell you're looking for.
Right.
In terms of what the picture is going to be.
23% Rotten Tomatoes score. 86% of users liked it.
Oh my god! Did you notice any huge discrepancy in terms of the amount of user submissions versus critic submissions?
It was just in the summary page of
because I would imagine a lot of these it's probably going to be like, oh, you've got your requisite, like, I don't know, say 100 critics nationwide that are paid to go see this, and then you're probably gonna have like 900, of which 45 of those are probably one person.
That, who knows, but usually Google reviews are quite a few people.
Well, no, you know what I'm saying? I'm not, but I'm saying like the type of audience is the one that's going to repeatedly repeatedly resubmit a favorable review of something.
So, moving forward, like 2012, Act of Valor, 26% on the critic scores, 87% user scores. And I'm just going to run right down the list here, because SEAL Team 6, which, I mean, SEAL Team 6, Rotten Tomatoes 50, 82% user score. American Sniper, I mean, that one you had it.
This is the only one I remember out of this list, and this is in the last 10 years. So.
And that's because it got some Academy Award nominations and everything.
Undeservedly.
I agree, but you could at least argue that acting-wise, if you're trying to do a biopic, even though it's something that, according to some people, really skews the biography, but whatever. I don't want to get into that. 72 on Rotten Tomatoes, 92 user scores, and then at the height of all the political brouhaha, you had 13 Hours, the Benghazi movie, which was it came out in 2016.
Yeah. Just
in time for the presidential campaign. Yeah. When Benghazi and emails were the big two things. So 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, 93% user reviews. 93 is the highest of any of these I found.
Yeah,
And I'm sure that it was people going because, hey, emails, Fox News. Lone Survivor did fairly well with 60 as the meta critic review, 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then the most recent one, 12 Strong, which was the one that I think it's still in the cheapies, 53% Rotten Tomatoes, 88% user scores. So what does this tell us?
That the people who are being targeted are getting what they want. They're getting their McDonald's cheeseburger. Because they're being shown a McDonald's cheeseburger.
And it all ties back in. I mean, if you look at the time frame on this stuff, these movies really start showing up around the time that people maybe started to question whether or not us invading the Middle East after 9/11 was a good idea. And there are still a lot of people who are emotionally invested in the idea that, you know what, this was the right thing to do, even though I would say that that is, look, I'll be the first to admit, I was in high school during 9/11, and everybody wanted blood. Everyone. It was almost unanimous when they were voting it on this in Congress, and that's largely because the public polls at the time were astronomically high.
Yeah, there's no easier way to get yourself at your midterm reelection other than, hey, I voted yes on this. Yeah.
Yeah, we wanted to hit back. Everybody did.
It's the classic American response, isn't it though?
Well, it's a classic human response.
Until, eventually we're gonna hit back and get hit really bad. Really bad. Someday it's gonna happen.
Somebody hit us. We can't let that stand. We need to hit back. But who do we hit back is the question. And that's where people started, almost immediately after wondering, wait a minute, what if all these guys that hijacked these airplanes were Saudis, why are we in Iraq and Afghanistan? Yeah. And people started to then really question, well, weapons of mass destruction, and I don't want to rehash talking heads from 2003 and 2004. That's not why I'm here. That's not why we're here. I'm here to talk about the cultural aspect of this, because when you look at the history of film in general, especially with war movies, if you look at the era around, immediately surrounding, even during World War II, a lot of it was in very favorable light. Then no one really looked back on World War II and said, nah, that was shit, we shouldn't have done that. I think we were all pretty much in agreement that defeating the Nazis was probably a good idea.
Yeah, even in the more like philosophical World War II stuff, there's never a doubt that it was a just cause.
Right. Nobody questions in Saving Private Ryan whether or not they should be there. Everyone knows Hitler's an ass. Yeah. But at least movies like that do bring up, wow, war can change people. War can bring out the worst in people, even if the cause is justified. Yeah. But at the end of the day, that cause, most people would say, is justified. Then you get that sort of mythical era in the late 50s through the early to mid 60s, looking back on World War II.
Which is basically the origins of American action movies.
Yeah. You got The Dirty Dozen, you've got Longest Day, The Great Escape. And at that point, it almost turned World War II into just a setting versus anything that wanted to be realistic. And admittedly, it's a pretty good setting for that time for making a proto-action movie.
It's the post-World War II, pre-Vietnam era is the only place where you could, 15 years out, when like your dad is probably still actually dealing with this shit, like be really into watching Hogan's Heroes. Like something like that could never come out in like a post-Vietnam, like it's like MASH is the closest, but MASH was about Korea, which is slightly different, so it's a little weird.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I've been talking a lot. I'll turn it over for a second, but what's your take on that? Because we are now in 2018, 17 years out, the equivalent of, what would that be, 1945 to 1962?
Yeah, so we're kind of in that that time frame.
Yeah, we are in the era that after World War II would have produced The Guns of the Navarone, Longest Day, and The Great Escape. 61, 62, 63. So what's different now?
Well, without getting into like the huge, like the fact that, like we already talked briefly about how World War II is, at least from the Allies side and the moral side, I guess you could even argue, completely justifiable. There was immediate like cultural and economic boom out of that. There wasn't really out of the Iraq War, because we're just in an era where that just doesn't really happen anymore, because these conflicts are pretty lopsided when you're the aggressor and far more advanced than the target.
And it should almost be noted that a lot of these movies started coming out after the recession. I mean, at this point, is
are we going to argue that it was an inside job for the military to be like, you know what, will they really be against us putting that much money, that much of their tax dollars into the F-35 program? Let's see how much they pay at the movies to go see schlock. Nope, we could probably slide that bill in.
Well, we didn't even talk about Top Gun. Top Gun came out in, what, 86?
Yes.
And that was a time period where it was very much just, you know what, we're over the fact that we got our asses kicked in Vietnam.
Yeah, the mid-'80s are that weird period where you don't see a lot of this because there really wasn't any fight. It was like, anybody who was probably really paying attention to, at the time, your probably most reliable outlets were probably CNN and New York Times. In terms of, like, you probably knew the writing was on the wall in terms of the Cold War, like, nothing was really going to happen. But, like, you still have stuff like, what was it? Like, was it War Games with Matthew Broderick? And,
great movie, by the way.
And, what was it? Like, Red Dawn? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was still trying to be like, no, they're really a bad guy. And even to a degree, a little bit of that's in Top Gun, but, like, it's not, it's clearly a dying conflict at that point.
So I guess that brings up the question, as more of a rhetorical question, of why these movies keep getting made. The easy answer is they make money.
Yeah.
We're talking, for the most part, very modest budgets, 40 million, give or take, which if you've got a very strong core audience, the same ones that identify largely right-wing, and I'm just going to say it, for the most part, I'm guessing there's a strong correlation between Trump voters and people who are enjoying these movies.
Oh, no doubt. And again, going into that, we're kind of in the waning of that post 9/11 super patriotism. That kind of ties in with that, the Gulf War was such the first Gulf War was such a resounding, like, smash victory that there wasn't really anything to, like, really make movies about it. I mean, there was Three Kings, and in the mid-2000s, Jarhead, which is an entirely different kind of picture anyways, which probably is one of the ones that you're going to see a better critic review than fan review. But that's why you probably had that, like, 96, 97, no, maybe 93 with Schindler's List through pre-9/11, where you see a lot of World War II stuff being made again. Like, Enemy at the Gates came out in that period. Private Ryan, stuff like that, because there's really not a lot of meat on the bone of the Gulf War to really try to make a hoorah movie out of. So, and I think that was around the time when news cycle wise, nothing really to talk about. Hey, the Greatest Generation is getting really old and they're starting to die off. Like, so there was that. I remember that though. Like, I remember, even though that was us in, like, middle school, there was kind of more of a fervor for, like, World War II type stuff. Like, that's why I really like World War II as a setting, is because a lot of those movies came out around then.
Yeah. I mean...
And my grandpa was in it.
So was mine. Yeah. D-Day, and I won't get into all of his personal exploits, because we've already been talking a while.
No, I mean, like, even like, video game media was like, hey... Like, what kind of war games? So that's where you get Medal of Honor and Call of Duty originally from.
And that was, what, late 90s originally?
Yeah. Battlefield 1942. I played a lot of that in college. But no, like the stuff that we're talking about, like, literally contemporary, is stuff that kind of, hey, remember when we, like, really slapped the hell out of the unidentifiable Taliban for a couple months? Let's make movies about that because it's been 10 years. Maybe people forgot, and we really need you to keep putting your flags out of your house.
And that's just, I am not a person who is going to say, hey, conspiracy or anything like that, because that's not, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. That being said, with Top Gun, the military was involved with that movie.
Yeah,
they helped out knowing that they were going to get a 2-hour Tom Cruise.
How else are you going to get footage of F-14s?
Right.
You have to be working with the military.
And I have not looked up any of these movies to see whether or not the military is directly involved with the production of any of these movies, but it would be kind of hard to imagine that they aren't.
I bet if you really wanted to do the hard research, you could look at the last, what the last text crawl is, thanks to, like, the state of Georgia for
right.
film. It's going to be thanks to the United States, Marine Corps their assistants and stuff like that.
And this is around the same time that '09 I think is when, maybe even earlier, when the DoD started paying the NFL to put the players out on the field.
Even to get back into the far more movie aspect of this, like the schlock terrible Transformers movies have a lot of military involvement. Like, hey, we want to like show people the Osprey and we want to show people the F-22 and stuff like that. Like, there was a concerted involvement by the U.S. military in those movies, particularly of we want to show these things, and like that's why they're that's part of the reason why they're garbage, is because hey, nobody wanted to like see the Transformers to see a Delta team, but that's basically what those movies end up being.
The irony of this is that the liberal Hollywood elite is such a favorite target of the people on the far right, who then flock to Hollywood to eat this shit up.
That gets into not the conspiracy, but into the like how the sausage is made. Of like, I bet for every like 12 strong that like Fox or Sony puts out, that allows them to do like some stupid, way over budget. Like that's probably where some of the money for like a weird why are we doing a Venom movie came from, is we made back on this, so it won't be a huge loss if it doesn't do too well, because
so let's rate it PG-13.
This cheaper property that we put out that we knew was going to make it back, made it back, so nobody's really going to be breathing down the picture studios next.
And not to get too preachy or anything, but it's a little depressing. Just the entire idea that you've got this many people who have latched their identities onto this so much that almost 20 years later, I'm not one of these people, all that they have is to go to the movies and watch this flag waving.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the internet age, and there is the double-edged sword of everybody's more well-informed, and then there's the asterisk on informed, because you're only informed in the way that you wish to be informed in these days.
A complete echo chamber.
But overall, in any way, everybody's more informed, and even at even at a school level, I mean, the sociological implication of patriotism is a little bit more part of like global studies and U.S. history at this point in time. That you can kind of see these. You have the larva of this coming out of high school now. If you're interested in a topic like this, to be able to see these signs and stuff more readily than you probably would coming out of high school in the 60s.
Yes. I have nothing to contribute to that, because you just
like I said, I mean the internet is a double-edged sword, but if you want to read a Cracked article about this, if you want to read a Wired article about this, if you want to read an AV Club, it's readily available to you to kind of be like, wow, that does kind of remind me of reading about like, what's the definition of patriotism? What is jingoism? Stuff that you had to understand to be able to pass a U.S. history class.
The difference between patriotism and nationalism, of love of one's country versus this notion that our country is superior, and that's really, it's the nationalism and the jingoism that these things really play up on. It's, we have an enemy, we went and kick that enemy's ass, wave the flag, what's next? Which gets back to, I mean, hell, that gets into Orwell. We're at war with East Asia. We've always been at war with East Asia. And that brings us to a movie that I just bought on 4K because I'd only owned it on DVD, and that's Starship Troopers.
Yes.
And Starship Troopers is the perfect antidote to whatever the fuck it is that we're seeing.
Because it's like the best seemingly bad movie ever.
Beyond that, it's very much, I mean, if you look at the arc of Rico, dumb high school kid.
And this is not taking, was it Heinlein's original book? And
no.
Because the movie is completely different.
No, we're talking strictly the movie, not the book. Because the movie is, it took the name and maybe a couple of general concepts, but it's a vastly different, especially the moral of the story. And this is Paul Verhoeven.
Was the movie 98, 96?
Whatever year Titanic came out, 97?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
I remember being young and seeing it in theaters. And not getting it, unfortunately, because I was still young and not smart enough to understand that it was satire.
But part of me always... There was something about it that, even though I saw it when it first came out on home video, something about it that always felt like, okay, there's a joke that maybe I don't understand, but I know that a joke is being told. Like when you hear people laugh at a joke that you may not get. Yeah, exactly. And
Starship Troopers it's really one of those, like, you literally can see yourself becoming metacognitive about. Because, like, people of our age were in, like, 6th, 7th, 8th grade when that came out.
Mm-hmm.
And probably didn't understand it because we weren't really, unless we weren't really the target audience, but at the same time, it was like the studio knew that Bugs versus swearing, like, Space Marines is gonna get kids in the theaters. Yeah. And Verhoeven was like, yeah, it's gonna work, and I'm gonna give them something they won't realize until later.
Well, you hear those lines about how Hiroshima was destroyed and how it's, oh, hey, that solved... I'm assuming they're still talking about World War II, although it almost sounds like they're implying a later event as well.
It's possible.
Because they were saying that Hiroshima was completely destroyed and that the city fathers couldn't talk about it. I mean, Hiroshima clearly was rebuilt after...
Yeah.
But one way or another...
That could be just the degradation of true fact in that movie, which makes it even much better, in my opinion.
I wish we had more time.
Yeah, but we could do a whole Starship Troopers episode at some point. But anybody worth their salt knows what the real story of that movie is.
But it wasn't
why it's good.
But it wasn't until after 9/11 that I really started to appreciate Starship. I always loved the movie because I loved RoboCop. It's that same sort of sense of humor. I always just loved the movie without really understanding why.
Yeah, it's one of those when you start connecting the dots between, like we talked about in a previous episode, like, before you realize that you really like a director, you start realizing you like their movies. Yeah.
Yes. But you've got these dumb high school kids that are joining for all sorts of weird reasons. Just, college money, whatever.
No, it's even more cut and dry. In their culture, you have to join if you want to have a family.
Yeah. But if you listen to some of them wanted to get into politics, which is very relatable.
It's very much the military replaced college for the contemporary audience, basically.
But it started to remind me of the people who my friends in the military didn't always have the highest opinion of. The people who joined in the late 90s, early 2000s, 2000, in the late 90s for the most part, because they wanted the GI Bill or something, and no one ever thought they would ever have to actually go to war.
Yeah, because then, to bring it back, when we were kids, the only ads you really had to go on were, I remember, like, the really cool, like, Marines and Air Force ads where it was like, hey, we're gonna show, like, the stealth bomber at night, like, in a city flyover. It's like that's all they really had to go on. I'm like, a whole recruitment group was based on just, we have cool shit. And that was like the 90s campaign was, we have cool shit.
And that was 20-year-old technology at the time, too.
Yeah. Well, the F-22 is awesome. Even as a non-military, the F-22 is awesome, and it's 25 years old.
Yes, anybody who can... Any
of the American fighter jets are awesome, and they're like 30 to 40 years old. The F-4 Phantom still gets used, and it's like 50 years old.
I don't think anyone can deny that the Apache helicopter is kind of badass.
Yeah.
That being said, anyway, back to the movie. Then you get Rico, who's going to drop out because his ulterior motives for joining all sort of got fucked up. And then the event happens with Buenos Aires getting blown up. And at that point, he gets very gung-ho. Everybody gets gung-ho. And...
Well, his whole motivation went from, I'm doing this to spite my parents.
Yeah.
To, no, I'm doing this to, like, honor my parents.
And there's other stuff, too, like, there's that debate between the two scientists where the one says, I find the idea of a brain bug offensive. And you've got these very emotional reactions.
The talking heads.
From people who know nothing about it. And these were largely the same people who would talk about things like, you can't have a mosque within a mile of the 9/11 site.
Yeah.
Within, near the Twin Towers Memorial and all that. And I started to see these parallels.
Yeah.
And
it helps that the movie lays it on really thick.
Very much so. But as they lay it on thick, that's what you got from talking heads in the real world too. Because
it's that when you really start to pull the curtain away and see Oz of the, there's no way it's this obvious in real life, and then you see a couple of like real life clips from some of these shows and you're like, oh no, it's even more obvious in real life sometimes.
Yeah. And a half an hour in, that brings us sort of to the point of this. It's that you've got this entire generation of film, of very bad films for the most part.
It's almost like a subgenre that nobody really realizes is a subgenre because there's not a lot of connectivity. I mean, there may be certain directors or people involved, but it's not as common.
You've got your Eastwood movies that sort of lean this direction, but I think he knows that he also doesn't want to go full that territory all the time.
Yeah, or whatever you want to think about Eastwood, at his core as an actor, he's an artist, and he probably just like, I don't want to keep painting the same picture.
Yeah. Iwo Jima was him, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was 2006.
That was the last of his World War II movies, wasn't it?
And I think a large part of that was just because we got into this era where, I mean, the first movie that I found that were these really gung-ho movies that were coming out as all the 9/11 fervor was falling apart was 2006, and that was Home of the Brave. And you've got this bizarre disconnect where, Iwo Jima was also 2006, and you saw the sort of changing of the guard. And these things that tended to be very American switched directions entirely.
But that, I know this isn't the topic, but I bet you see huge discrepancies between, because you see those two Eastwood movies as two sides of the same coin, because you've got Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima, and both are exceptional, but I bet there's a lot less interest in Letters from Iwo Jima, because you had to read the movie.
Yeah.
It was also the first Blu-ray I think I had.
I should probably bring up at this point that there's currently an internet controversy over the fact that in the upcoming Neil Armstrong biopic, that there's an internet furor over the fact that they have skipped the scene where he plants the flag.
Oh, wow.
Have you seen this?
Would they be as mad if they pull out and you realize it's Kubrick directing it on a soundstage? But at least they get their flag planting, right?
That joke has been made on the internet countless times.
It'll never be bad, though.
Right.
It's like everybody's gonna laugh at a fart regardless of culture and your taste, because it's certain things are just always gonna be funny. The fake moon landing is always gonna be funny because there's gonna be a contingent of people who are always gonna be salty because they're always gonna just be like, "There's no way that we faked it." But wouldn't it be funny? It would be funnier if it was.
Well, in the age of the Trump presidency, you've almost got, if you look back at history, in the first century BC, Julius Caesar became the focal point of all of Roman politics, and now you've got this very much almost a similar atmosphere where the rest of politics gets thrown out the window, the rest of daily life gets thrown out the window, and you're talking about a movie with Neil Armstrong. Or about Neil Armstrong, starring Ryan Gosling, where he still has the American flag patch on his uniform.
But it's not American enough to certain people.
You still see the flag. They just, as an artistic choice, because they were trying to focus, I think, more on... It's not out yet. They're trying to focus more on the biopic, from what I understand, and don't really want to get into the whole, almost like the right stuff sort of thing.
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be less about... Supposedly, it's going to be less about the monumental technological and technical achievement. It's going to be more about the personal journey.
Right.
But certain people are going to be mad because...
Because that one scene... And it's hilarious because Marco Rubio went out and was making statements against it and about how it's a divisive thing to do, since what America needs to see right now is American technology and an American flag planting. And for anyone who maybe isn't aware of late 1940s technology, all of our rocket technology came from the Nazis.
Yes.
That's not. It was Operation Paperclip. Yeah, this is not some sort of esoteric knowledge.
Yeah, people seem to forget that directly post war, it was kind of like, and this is gonna be a terrible joke, but it was kind of like the, hey, there's a hurricane coming, let's go to Walmart and get everything we really need to make sure our house is fine. Except it was, hey, let's get all of the really good rocket scientists before the Russians, who are also at Walmart at the same time, get all the rocket scientists.
Yeah, but I think the point that we were really trying to get at with this is, like you were saying, we've got this entire subgenre of movies that has
persisted,
that is, well, it's really come out, and it's really a great mirror of American society, because you've got all of an entire segment of society who has really latched on to American nationalism as the key part of their identity in a way that we hadn't seen in generations. And that's creeped its way into film, and it's even making things divisive now when it comes to film itself.
I think it's because nowadays it's a very black and white or heads and tails situation, where you could show me like a movie like American Sniper that I can acknowledge is like shot well, it tells its story well, but I'm going to be on the tail side because I'm going to eye roll at a lot of it. And there's going to be a contingent of people who are going to always be on the head side. They're going to be like, what do you mean it's not, it's over the top? And there's going to be those of us on that tail side that are going to be like, it's obvious it's over the top. Like, it's super over the top. Because we're in that age where it's like the guy who you see at the store that's got his American flag baseball cap on and his Made in America, literally Made in America shirt. Like, that, you eye rolling at that guy might get you more dirty looks nowadays than it did 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
And I don't hate the country that I live in.
No, it's just
I just don't use it as the core of my identity.
Yeah, it's annoying. It's annoying that you can't really say that without getting more negative reaction nowadays.
Yeah,
and to a degree, certainly frightening.
The idea of it's always been this way, that makes it good, is a terrible way to live your life. You should be able to question things. It doesn't mean that you don't like something or love something.
Well, it hurts too that we're American and we've always grown up around it to a degree. Like, just an aside, I like for Magic and for a little bit of video game stuff, I watch a Canadian group of guys that stream, and then they talk about how different it is being Canadian and going to America because of how often you see American flags. Like, you go past any car dealership in America, it's not uncommon to see a giant American flag. I don't know if Perkins is still around. Perkins always had the biggest goddamn American flag on the face of the planet at every location.
Yeah.
And it's just that stuff that you see in our country. Americana is just a part of what we are, even if we don't acknowledge it or lean into it as much as other Americans do. But an outside perspective sees that as really kind of weird, because in certain other countries, it's just not really like that wearing it literally on your sleeve aspect of your national identity isn't as prevalent as it is here.
What I'm really hoping for, though, is, I guess to sort of wrap this up, is after all of those movies that we talked about earlier in the early 60s, as we were really getting into Nam, you then get that era right after Nam with the Deer Hunter, Apocalypse Now, and a little bit later Platoon.
The ones that are, if you notice, actually memorable, more so than the ones that came out 6 months ago that I don't even remember seeing ads for.
And that's just it. What I'm hoping for is that eventually maybe we start to see a little bit more in terms of, like, none of those movies, and I think this is what is lost on a lot of people who love to wave the flag because it's who they are and who've, made it part of their core. What I'd really love to see are just maybe some more movies that question whether or not this was all an objectively good thing, without going into, you don't have to bash your own country to make a movie like we did with, say, Saving Private Ryan. I didn't make Saving Private Ryan, but Saving Private Ryan, it's like, okay, here's what we did that was necessary, here's the cost of it. I just want to see a little bit more introspection in my movies, other than people on horses charging at the Taliban and and getting, what, a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
So, fingers crossed that we get back to that era of cinema, because right now, the stuff in this genre, and that's why Starship Troopers is so great.
Yeah.
We didn't really get into, we've got a minute or two more, because that movie really is. There was an article, it might have been Cracked, that talked about the comparisons between 9/11 and Starship Troopers, and they're not wrong. You've got an event that is a huge civilian casualty incident pulled off by a faceless other, exactly. That, by all accounts, shouldn't have been able to do that, and that was used as justification both by leaders and as people to go and join up. And I think the super depressing part about that movie is that no one ever questions it. And that's really what the movie was driving home, that at the end, when, the brain bug's afraid and all of that, what Verhoeven is doing is saying, whoa, you guys have totally bought into this, and it has changed who you are at your core. And I don't want to see our society totally go that direction. And the fact that critic reviews are still at the point where they're not falling into this means that at least there's certain people that are thinking and not just falling for it all these years later. But I'm done rambling. Anything to add to that?
No, it is interesting because that, like, you are kind of you're reeled in by the end of Starship Troopers, because even though you know what the actual story there is, it's still the rock. We've talked about the like hooray moment, and you're just like, wait a minute, oh, I bought in. Like I got hooked.
In watching it the other day, because I bought the 4K restoration and it's fucking great. When they're torturing the brain bug,
it's all redacted.
Well, not only that, but it almost made me think of like all the waterboarding and everything that went on,
all that stuff.
Yeah, and who knows? I mean, they're still not sure whether or not some of the people that were captured and taken to Abu Ghraib or Gitmo or any of those.
I bet that's going to be probably in 10 years' time, depending on politically and culturally where we are. That's going to be the first the first domino of these kind of movies. Is like there's going to be like a fictionalized but like a Gitmo movie that's going to get a lot of people really mad
on both sides.
Yeah.
And it's weird
because I bet that's going to be about the time that there's going to be enough of people that had served and operated there that maybe some of their info is going to get leaked out, and the government's not going to be as on them about keeping it under wraps.
And it's weird to think.
Or stuff's going to be declassified because of just
Freedom of Information Act stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that's going to be one of the things that's going to be one of those big like talking point movies. It's going to be coming out probably in a decade or so.
And I hope so, because when they made Starship Troopers and had that scene at the end, there's no way they could have predicted that we would watch it all these years later, and really, did I say 20th or 30th anniversary or whatever? It was 97 to 20. Yeah, 20 years.
Yeah, Jesus.
21 years now. But there's no way that they could have predicted me and you sitting here talking about the brain bug being a direct analogy to the waterboarding at some of our black sites.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of unintentionally became more of a talking point film. I mean, it was always going to be a talking point film because it is supposed to be about that. It's supposed to be about like jingoism and nationalism, but I don't think it would have reverberated as much as it has based on the last 20 years.
Yeah. All right. I think we'll end it there. We're hitting the 45-minute mark.
We're rambling.
So, yeah, we are. There's no excuse. We're rambling at this point. Hopefully you have feedback. If you do, please leave it. We'll be back with more content soon. Can we delete comments on YouTube?
I don't know.
User comments? I don't know. Because I think the first person to call us a bunch of libtard cucks
I
is.
think I might want to like permanently have that because I think it's hilarious.
I do too, but I don't. I'm not.
Can we pin YouTube comments so that's the first comment that everybody always sees, regardless of how far down the thread possibly it is?
I loved Zero Dark 30, you libtard cucks. On that note, thanks for listening. We'll be back soon.
And as always, would you like to know more?